Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Saturday, July 25th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central, or a little bit after, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We're going to do a little DM review of some stuff that you might or might not think of when you think of RPGing, in that it's mostly wargaming stuff. In fact, we're going to go a little beyond the scope of what that title card says. DM review Citadel and Warhammer craft books. And I got to tell you, I really like these things for inspiration. You can usually find them fairly inexpensively available in, half-price books, thrift stores, various places, like the one on the title card. How to paint Citadel miniatures. You know what? We're going to, since we're not doing a lot with, yeah, let's do that. I don't want to block the skull. Right? We'll keep that in the background. Anyway, books like this, How to Paint Citadel miniatures, are pretty decent for getting inspiration. Let's pull that camera back a little bit, give myself a little more room to show off the books. Got the Tower Gygax shirt working. Boy, this thing's seen better days. I don't know. I'm going to have to get this replaced, huh? I don't know if I can get these anymore. They were available at Gen Con when they were running the Tower Gygax at Gen Con, back in the day when things were still less turbulent amongst the G's. And then they were selling them off, what they had left of them, at GaryCon after the Tower of Gygax events were nixed as being possible to do. And, I was grabbing every GaryCon t-shirt that was there, as I always do. And I don't have a virtual one. I should get one of those. Anyway, I grabbed one of these, Everything was... I've got a lot of black t-shirts, and I like black t-shirts, don't get me wrong. But I don't have a lot of brown t-shirts. Blue, green, red even. Gamer shirts I'm talking about. But brown ones I didn't have a lot of. And this is really... was really a nice, beautiful, clean shirt. On the back it says, I survived, which is cool. Anywho, on with the show. What do we like here? Well, you want some inspiration. This has 40K. It has what would be now Sigmar, although they used to just call it Fantasy. And it has some Lord of the Rings stuff too. This was revamped in 2003. Rick Priestley did a new preface for it for 2003. And I think they did it in 2003 because this is not long after they picked up the Lord of the Rings line. So they were able to extend it a little bit. This is kind of the successor to something else we'll look at in just a little bit, which was their complete guide to painting Citadel miniatures, their heavy metal line. I don't know if the green screen's going to screw some of that up. We'll see. We will see. There's going to be some holes in this. Can you see the stands in this? Yeah, you can. You can see those. Okay, maybe it won't be too much of a problem. Anyway, first we're going to look at this, How to Paint Citadel Miniatures. We're looking for inspiration in these kind of things. Heck, just the inside cover alone, right? Just has a plethora of various types of troops, various types of models, many of them fantasy types. Back in the day, when they first started putting together boxes of miniatures, unit boxes for Warhammer Fantasy. Nice paint chart on the back and the inside back. You know, this is a very colorful book. There's lots. You know what? I'll read the back here. Listen to this. This is their intent, right? Fully illustrated throughout with examples from Warhammer, Warhammer 40K, and Lord of the Rings ranges. How to paint Citadel miniatures clearly explains how to assemble and paint your models for gaming and display using the Citadel color range. Good morning, Ink Dweller. How you doing, buddy? Whatever your level of experience, this is the indispensable guide for anyone wanting to learn more about painting miniatures. Included in this book are sections on which tools and material to use, how to prepare and assemble your models, a comprehensive guide to different techniques, blending, dry brushing, glazes, layering, mixing, and washes. 12 complete stage by stages using the described techniques, and these are what these are the different stage by stage guides they give you. Space Marine, Chaos Marauder, Dwarf Slayer, Rider of Rohan, Imperial Guard, Empire Spearman, High Elf, Dark Elf, Witch Elf, Orc, Kroot, and Eldar. So some of these, obviously, if you're a, and I always focus on D&D on this show. If you're a D&D player, the Warhammer 40K stuff is going to be maybe not so useless. Morning, Artanis. How you doing? Maybe not so useless from the point of view of somebody who's just looking for painting techniques and doesn't care what model they're using to pick that stuff up. And I'm a fan of using miniatures. As a wargamer before D&D was first published, and it said right on the cover that you should be using miniatures. It suggested, and in the early days, really, it's all we did. I mean, we played war games when we played war games, and we were all over the place moving figures around, and ancient and medievals were kind of my focus. So a lot of my miniatures could be used in RPGs too, which was nice. And when we started playing D&D, 90% of the time, the miniatures were out on the table to show marching order, to show where one character was compared to another in case somebody needed to cast a spell, and who's in the way, and do I need to give you a healing? Well, how far away are you? And things like that. And, who's up front when we're walking down a hallway and there's a pit trap, right? We want to know who's in the first rank and who's in the second. We want to get some dex checks, as we used to do, instead of reflex saves or whatever your system of choice calls for. Anyway, the time we would move them around, we didn't necessarily have a grid. We were used to using rulers and moving things by inches, and so just an open field was fine, and just to show relative positions. You're way over here, and so-and-so's way over there, and this is where the main body of the group is, and oh yeah, you said you went with him, that's right, okay, we'll put you back over here, you two are still around the corner, we'll put a block of something here to represent the turn in the corner or whatever. So it was fairly loose using miniatures for RPGing early on for us. We didn't use specific movements and stuff unless it, if it came to that, if it got to be important, the Dungeon Master would just adjudicate it, and everybody knew the Dungeon Master was a referee. who would just be fair and wasn't out to kill you really. Because who wants to sit around while someone else rolls up a character? It can be fun. Don't get me wrong. We'll do it if we have to. But we want to see our player characters succeed. Anywho, lots of cool stuff in here. Got that preface. You've got all the different painting guides, right? Different preparation techniques, materials. Talks about all that stuff. Talks about finishing touches, the stage by stage at the back. But what's cool about this are pictures along the way. I'll go past the equipment and stuff. Then I'll go past some of the preparation stuff because that's mostly cutting figures out and gluing them together and showing how to do all that, which is important. Great little graphics on different ways to, because remember, a lot of arms and weapons and that sort of thing come as separate parts. So you can pose your figures, various different things. Oh, what I was saying before was cool dragon. Or wyvern, I don't know. I think it's dragon. You could pick up early on, and this is how most of us, everyone I know, just about, that was DMing, would fill out the ranks of their miniatures by getting a box of skeletons, Citadel skeletons. Get a box of Citadel zombies, because you needed a bunch of each of those, and get a box of men-at-arms, and get a box of Bretonnian archers, and get, if you needed some cavalry, you didn't just go out and buy one guy on a horse. You went out and you picked up a box of light armor, or light armored cav, or heavy cavalry, or whatever it was you were trying to represent in your game in the location where, if you're, you might not need cavalry in a dungeon, obviously, but if the group was outdoor adventuring and they were going from one town to another in a empire where there were constant patrols of, heavily armed knights, you'd want some of those. You get a few of those. But you'd paint them up different colors. And this is what's great about this book, is the ideas for different paint schemes and what is it I need. I love the pantaloons, the multicolored pantaloons. Those Empire guys are always goofy. They're more like the multicolored. It's almost Renaissance, really, in some of the French and England. The French and English periods, Renaissance period, where you had a lot more color stuff, and German too, Spain, most of Western Europe. Got to get those orcs painted up, big old cleavers on some of them. I'm never a huge fan. I like this unit of trolls though. Never a huge fan of, once the weapons started getting ridiculously oversized, because, and basing materials. Got to know about your basing materials. Once the weapons started getting oversized, I started veering away from a lot of too much zombie dragon. Pretty cool. And started veering away from the GW stuff, but there was a lot more. There were a lot more other lines of miniatures out by the time that came about. These 12 are the 12 I read off the back cover that are highlighted in the 12 different stage by stage. Notice what they do too, though, with the name of the type of figure, but also the professional who painted it, which is nice that they give credit right by the figure. But Ryder or Rohan in the upper left, you get those High Elf Phoenix Guards. They go back and forth here with the different lines. Kroot. Look at the Kroot. What's he doing in this picture that we're used to today? He's wearing a mask, isn't he? Of course he is. Of course he is. He's staying safe. He's not crazy. Nothing wrong there. I like there the 12-stage, 12-step Rider of Rohan paint job. There's 7 steps on that page, and then we get to the other page. And of course, this is a 3-pager because you've got to deal with the horse too, right? So, and look at that whole unit down there. So nice to be able to. So a lot of these books I have found, pardon me while I itch the end of my nose. Itch, how about scratch? Eldar Marauder. Now this guy, he's pretty cool. He's a good barbarian type, right? The Chaos Marauder. This is an older school one too, though. Wonderful. There's a whole unit of them. Let me see if I can get that in there. Oop, there we go. We're losing some of it because of the green screen. I presume I would need a magnifying glass to paint that that small, so detailed. Some people do. Certainly, I sometimes switch glasses to something with more magnification, and then also use a ring light. You know, a light with a magnifier in the center and a ring light when I'm getting in on the smaller details. And you know what? I'm a shit painter. I am no good at all. I'll be the first to tell you that when I slap paint on something, it's going to come out the other side looking acceptable from 6 feet. There's a kind of a, I have to take my glasses off, ink dweller. Okay, yeah, you have the opposite problem I have. The kind of rule I think I've heard is 6 feet. If you can look at something and it looks okay from 6 feet away, that's like an army painting style, right? And then, and this is like an old wargamer thing, I think, more than anything else, maybe. And then from 18 inches, if you can move up to 18 inches away from a figure and look at it and it looks pretty good, then that's like for individuals that you've painted, whether they're leaders of an army unit, right? So you can paint the 6-foot rule for most of the troops, but then you want your leaders to be able to be looked at from like 16. But if you can pick something up and see it from 6 inches and admire it and really like it, then that's more, that's like tournament level painting. So 6 feet, 18 inches, 6 inches are like the 3 levels. You know, if you see something from 6 inches and it looks like crap, and then you move it away to 18 inches and it still looks like crap, you better hope it looks good at 6 feet, because it's going in the back of the army. Back where it can do very little army visual damage to your Empire Spearmen. Those are alright. There's your Kroot. We're going to skip those guys. The Slayers. Yeah, you know, that's another thing. Some of the dwarves got kind of goofy, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the crazy Mohawk guys. Hard to see in those ones here. There's a good one. Let's look at that. I'm not a big fan of the Mohawk look on the dwarves. I know it's supposed to make them look wild and crazy, right? Anywho, Witch Elf. She's kind of neat. We'll look at her in one of the later stages just to get an idea of the figure. Let's look at her in the first picture there, which is the completed right? So they've got some interesting figs for sure. And like I say, box of skeletons, box of zombies, box of men at arms, box of Bretonian archers, um, box of light cavalry. Later on in the 2000s, those Riders of Rohan were perfect for that sort of thing. I think you'd get 5 in a box for same price as most other boxes. One of the, you look for those introductory ones, and that's the way to go. Also, while you're at it, if you're doing tabletop stuff, here's another one's worth picking up, is the How to Make War Games terrain. And this is going to be tough because there's going to be a lot of green in this one, which is not going to translate well to the green screen, right? Big old holes in my book. Hilarious. Anywho, this shows you, again, full color. It'll show you all sorts of painting techniques. But look at the doors here. There's just a whole page full of different styles of doors. And that's good stuff to know. It shows you how to construct from scratch small buildings, right? If you want to throw some together, this from cardboard, just on like cereal box cardboard or cracker box cardboard, and maybe a little foam, little square of foam board for the base. Shows you how to take old round tube cans like Pringles cans or various things like that and make some towers or some huts, right? Oops, that's going to be, let's do this. Some of that's going to shine through with the, but you get the idea. And, shows you the step-by-step on making a bunch of little buildings. And isn't that useful? How do you make piles of rocks? Well, we do it one way, this way, that way. There's a hobbit hole. Make yourself a handful of those, and suddenly you're in the Shire. Shows you how to make a bridge, little footbridge, stone or wooden, right? So you've got all these cool little things, all these cool, make them into rivers. Gotta show you how to do that too, right? Trees, whole section on making trees. And of course, the whole front part of it is, it's got some cool ways to show you how the army lays out on that. Those won't show up very well with the green screen stuff going on. This might have been a day not to have green screen, right? I don't know. The whole front section, of course, is on materials, flocking, gravel, sandpaper, straws, toothpicks, tubes, thin cardboard, glue, all of your equipment, right? The actual tools you need. They emphasize they've got their own line of everything, right? Snipping tools and whatnot. But, you're not locked into that. Nice little castle. Do they actually show you at the back how to make... They get into some of that, right? Here's the whole... Here, let's switch hands here. Here's a whole page on buildings and castles and stuff. Ideas for inspiration. Special projects, they call that. And that's great. Get some outdoor ruins. Get some more castle work. There we go. Some 40K stuff, refineries and tanks like holding tanks. Lots of ruins. 40K loves a good ruin. But so does fantasy. So do RPGs. Stuff sunken in the ground. Oop. We'll get in closer for that one. There we go. specialized things. Statues is a good one, and not just for 40K, right? Oop, oop, oop. I'm covering it up. That's a good one. Oop. There we go. Pretty cool. Right on. Okay, so that's how to make war games terrain. Another one worth grabbing up when you see it for. I mean, these things sold. They weren't super expensive to begin with. They might have been 15, 20 bucks now, maybe. But a lot of times you'll see these laying around in half-price books, and they'll actually be half price. Or you'll see them at a garage sale or a thrift store, and there'll be a buck or two, and it's like, oh heck yeah, grab an extra. Whenever I see them laying around like for a buck or two, I'll just grab it and pass it on to a pal because they're well worth having in the collection. They're inspirational and they give you the tips for all the basics and stuff. And like I said, this was the forerunner, the heavy metal. They got away from that sort of early. Well, this one is 93, but it's got a whole lot more unusual terrain in it. That again, green screen's going to screw that up a little bit. And it had a whole bunch of stuff in there in regard to banners, templates for making banners, colorful banners. This had a couple cut out of it already, sadly. But, you know, buy something secondhand. Going to find some problems. Good to have that, though. Give us some examples of painting up both standard troops and leaders for different units that in the 90s were in vogue. The style of vintage. Look at the Skaven back then. Right? They're a little meatier back then than the little less. The Chaos Beasts are kind of cool. Look at the trolls, right? Here, you saw them. Let's see. And of course, like with the other book, this is going to have both 40K and fantasy stuff in it. This was pre-2000s, so it's before their license for Lord of the Rings, so you're just going to see regular old fantasy stuff in there. Look at the skeletons. Archers, swordsmen, dwarves, goblins, night goblins, forest goblins. They had a whole bunch of different kinds of goblins back then. Orcs and savage orcs. Those are two different things, by the way. Whole army viewpoints, whole army pictures. Again, some of that stuff's not going to look very useful because of the green. But some examples of leaders. These are crazy good paint jobs, too. These things are just... There's so much detail on the models and on the banners that you just can't... Yeah, these are worth it. Like I say, these are the kind of books... Grabbing them at full price, if you actually play Warhammer and you specifically want to learn how to paint the newer books for newer models. For these, if you're picking up vintage models, Warhammer models, and you want to paint them up for like some, what they call old hammer games, where you're using the old miniatures, the old style of models and everything like that, then for sure, you pick up something like this, and then you paint up your models based on the way they were suggesting to paint them in the 90s or in the 80s. And you're going to have a really nice vintage army. It's blunderbuss and the war wagon there. Chariots are cool. Here's all the vehicles. I keep hitting my mic. Sorry about that. Anywho, that's the heavy metal stuff. Here shows you a whole bunch of how to, paint the skellies. That's a good way to learn. Skeletons are a great way to learn. dry brushing techniques. This whole guide just on horses, right? It's just so amazing. Step by step, the various ways you can paint horse faces and fetlocks, right? And limb markings, they say, right? The leg, the hoof. Pretty neat, because they want all your horses to look good, right? And that's groovy. Are we at the 30-minute mark painting wolves? You know, let's go a little bit longer today, because there's, well, we're just about done with this one. Spend a nice time on techniques for painting faces, which is very tricky, especially eyes. Right? I mean, if you spent $2, $3, even $5, maybe even $10, and picked up something like this as a novice painter and learned how to do a decent job painting eyes and faces, and learned how to thin paint and color mix, put together washes, learned how to dry brush, maybe do some highlighting and shading. If you just learned that handful of things right there out of books like this, and granted, supplement stuff with YouTube videos. You know, back in '93, you couldn't go to YouTube and watch somebody paint the exact model that you're trying to figure out how to paint. But you can do that these days, and that's good. But it's nice having a guide in your hand with detailed step-by-step details that you know, and maybe they explain it differently. Maybe there's something said, you know, we all learn in different ways. Maybe there's something to be said for seeing it on the page as well as seeing it in a video, and you know, collectively through both mediums you're learning, and it's cementing and sticking, and you're getting better at stuff. So here's all the stores in '93. Well, there you go. That's not going to come out at all. See those little dots in the hole? So that's all green. Anywho, suffice it to say, what we have there is all the stores in England, in the UK. But you could just take that map and make a campaign map of it, and put a castle everywhere there's a 1993 Games Workshop store in the UK, and then give them all armies and set them on each other. So we're at 33. We're gonna cut it out anyway, and maybe next week or the week after we'll look at these strategy battle guides from Lord of the Rings. And maybe next week or the week after, when we do that, I won't use a green screen, and that way I don't have holes. Right? So we've got the original Fellowship of the Ring one, and then Two Towers. There was a I don't have it. It's somewhere. But this is chock full of pictures from the movies, as well as breakdowns of the stats for the various creatures. But I gotta say, if you're putting together some miniatures and you don't get some inspiration from just flipping through something like this. So if the rules have been replaced, if there's a new edition, and a lot of times this is true for the various faction guides from previous editions. We've moved on during the COVID crisis here. We've moved on to 9th edition from 8th, which was around for 3 years from 7th. When I started at the game store, 7th edition 40K was the thing. And then it turned to 8th 3 years ago, and just during this, right around the beginning of this crisis, they moved on to 9th edition So I don't know how that's going to affect gaming at the store when we get back to it. We will see. I haven't seen a ton of complaints. People haven't said much, but those guys that play in tournaments and like to play in tournaments, they're gonna just switch. They've done it a few times, and they know that it's an attempt to rebalance everything and address some of the inequities that armies can compete on a level playing field. And it really comes down then to the skill of the player. When they set the armies right and they set the rules correctly, and everybody's playing by the same rules, then there are going to be times when an experienced player is going to have a great army match up against a less experienced player because they just know how to finagle. Oh, what are you bringing? Oh, you got this kind of army. Well, I'm going to bring a lot of this, and they know how to min-max that to the extreme. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking when you have two fairly evenly matched good players playing with the same rule set. If the rule set is good, and this is what they strive for each time that they update them, if the rule set is good and balanced, then no matter which two armies are competing, it should be it should come down to player skill, and that's what you hope. Anyway, this was about a review of these Citadel and Warhammer craft books, and I recommend them for people that use miniatures in RPGs as sources of inspiration and guides for painting and making terrain for their RPGing. They can often be had on the cheap at thrift stores and half-price bookstores and used bookstores. When I talk cheap, I'm even saying if you see them for $5 or $10, flip through them and see if that feels right to you. But I'd grab them. I mean, if I didn't have them, and even though I have them, if I see them for $1 or $2 somewhere, I'll grab them and I'll pass them on to a friend because I think they're well worth having, and even just to flip through and enjoy $1 or $2. Geez, skip a candy bar, right? Grab yourself a freaking book with some pictures in it. That's cool. Anywho, still looking pretty washed out on the light. I've got a new light coming, and once it gets here, I'll have to mess with it and try to set it up. It's got some filters on it. It's one of those ring lights where you can set the phone or webcam in the middle and do your show, whatever. I'm gonna have to set that up somewhere up over here behind the monitors, and then we'll move this fluorescent bright white light back over the craft table in the other part of the studio. Yeah, it's a room in my apartment, right? Anywho, it should look better once we get that going. I was thinking about switching, right, to evenings next week. Not going to happen. Don't have to worry about it. One of the reasons I was thinking about it was I was up for jury duty. Isn't that crazy? I'll talk more about that on Monday. But they don't want me. They don't need me, whatever. So I don't even know if they're still doing the jury stuff yet. Maybe they thought better of it. Seems a little risky. I don't know. Again, we'll talk about it on Monday. That's the announcement news day, and I guess that's news and announcement. But needless to say, same time all next week. Not going to might do an extra evening show on Monday, run a game or something. Let's see who I can see who's available, and talk some people into playing Monday evening. Is anybody here now? Somebody who might be interested in doing a first edition game? I'll have pre-gens. We'll use Roll20. We'll probably use Discord voice chat maybe. Maybe we'll just use the straight up voice chat from Roll20 because that seems to work well enough anyway. Artanas, Wanted to make sure you and Ink Dweller 8 were both in here, and Luxfire 22 in for the drawing. This is the end of the week. Last day being Saturday. You're all in there, so you're all good. Never tried that first? All right, well, let's talk on Monday and see if we can get enough people to get a game together. I'll count you as interested. And that's officially Gary Gygax's day, right? The 27th is his birthday. So playing a first edition game on the evening of the 82nd anniversary of his birth is kind of a thing. I'll have to kill everybody. That's just a rule. I'm not in charge of how that works on Gary Gygax's day, but I'm kidding. We'll have fun. It's always fun. Always a good time. All righty. Obviously, I have to kill everyone, right? All right. Thank you very much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Let's pop back over here and take a look at the... Oop, I want to do this. Don't forget, this weekend, anytime you can play or run a game. It is Gary Gygax's Day weekend. Can't buy happiness, but you can run a game. And that's pretty close. So there you go. There's the schedule. Saturday, DM reviews. Got rules retrospective tomorrow. Weekly news and announcements on Monday. Cartography and world building on Tuesday. Campaign discussion on Wednesday. Game running tips on Thursday. And building adventures back around on Friday. Thanks again for following. If you are following the channel, do speak up in the stream chat during the course of a live stream, because that's how we know you're actually a person and not a bot, and can be added to the list to potentially win something. You know, it's not a prize. It's just a giveaway. It's a little gift to anybody. There's no purchase necessary. None of that crap. If you're catching up with us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up, like if you like what you thumbed up. And feel free to make a comment. Give us some constructive criticism. We're always happy to know what you're thinking and make some changes or adjustments to the show for its betterment. Thanks again, everybody. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Happy Gary Gygax's Day weekend, and we will see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Bye-bye.